it is so nerve-wracking to write something concise about that, so I have a little cheat sheet. I'm going to read from it. So about 10 years ago, when my old gallery shut their doors, Deb contacted me out of the blue and asked me for a studio visit. And we hit it off right away and had like endless conversations. And I couldn't believe how easy it was to talk to Deb and how you go from the most mundane to the deepest and just back and forth, and always with a huge sense of humor. And I was sure that I'm the most interesting person in this world and that I had the deepest connection to Deb. It came to no small shock to realize that everybody in her orbit feels exactly the same way. You have deep conversations. But then, but that's the crazy thing with Deb, is that this is at the heart of what Deb does, of who she is and everything that she touches and puts together. So when she puts together an adventure, whether it's a magazine or the gallery, a podcast, it's always about community. It's about intelligent, real conversation, and dialogue always is at the heart of it. She's the one to help you make sense out of your ideas and then writes the brilliant press release. She's the one who believes and supports you even when you think you have reached a total dead end. She's the one that is loyal and sticks by you no matter how crappy the work might look in between. She's interested in the whole person and where the work will take you. She's also the one that will be at the hospital bed for days, who will put together a memorial, no sleep, who will drive across town with the smoothie for the person who is sick and the occasional crystal. And so in an art world that makes that where market forces determine everything, and it's all too easy to feel cynical about and not trust any of your relationships, it is really all too rare to find a person who believes in the power of art and in each individual. And yeah. So Deb herself started as a visual artist, which you'll probably see, and so talented that I couldn't believe you ever gave it up. And then you went on to study semiotics at Brown, and afterwards write part of the between, I don't know if you smell it, between one of my spraying crap in the air, taking my phone anyways. We went back to the important thing. So she goes to Brown to study semiotics. Straight out of Brown, puts together a magazine, and we'll talk about this, of art papers at a really high level of writing, beautifully put together. Moves to LA and opens a gallery. Which this gallery, Klowden Mann, if you haven't visited, is a beautiful gallery. It very quickly rose to, what I say. It's great. It's a highly acclaimed mid-level gallery. So the gallery quickly became one of the most respected mid-level galleries and a community hub that invites real dialogue through artist talks and really allows all of us to focus on what brings us together and brings us to art in the first place. Looking at Deb's huge smile and sense of humor, it would be hard to guess that this woman had to battle constant, excruciating physical pain every single day of her life. Might slightly explain how she's able to connect the intensely personal and the real with the other worlds of art, writing, community. Not to forget motherhood and being a fashion hound and a badass.
Well, I didn't know that was going to happen, and now I'm just going to sit here and like cry for the first 10 minutes. So we'll see how I do with this. I wanted to start with this image because it's a picture of me in 1996 in a ska band, and I had this. I'm going to be circular in a lot of my thinking about most things because that's kind of how I work. But I had.
It'll wake up. Just
Yay!
yeah. Sorry.
So one of the things that I get to do often at the gallery is that different artists in the community will bring by classes for a variety of different reasons. Sometimes they're visual arts classes, sometimes they're art appreciation classes. It's a wide range. Sometimes they're specifically studying art business. And I had this artist come by several months ago, and he's something of kind of like a cool kid. You know, he's just always very much like in the right place at the right time with the right people. You know, all of those things that still make me feel like this girl right here with like the awkward haircut, who never fit in anywhere. And he brought this class by. I showed his work quite a bit at the very beginning of the gathering. He brought this class by and asked me to tell my story. And so I told my story, and at the end, he said, well, that was very human. And he said it like, on the one hand, thank you for sharing all of these things to my class that helped to break down the mystique of the art world. And on the other hand, kind of like it was a little bit gross, like maybe he was holding it out like this. And he was like, okay, next we're going to go to Blum and Co. And we're going to talk to him. So it was very much like, you could tell that he set it up as we're going to go talk to the woman who's very nice and very human, and then we're going to go and terrify you. And it was really funny because I had this moment where I was like, actually, this right here is very much what it's about for me, which is I have a very, very dear friend. I've always been lucky to have people who are close to me who were brilliant artists in a variety of different disciplines and spaces. And this particular friend is a writer. She writes for television, and she's also a political activist. And something she says over and over and over again is it matters the stories that we tell. And she says that from the direction of our understanding of our culture, our understanding of what's going on in the world is constantly built by the stories that are told by artists. That is how we continue to learn from each other and understand, and it's what helps people later on understand and interpret the time that we're living in. So I wanted to go back a little bit. Unfortunately, even though Alex talked about my artwork, I have like 0 pictures of my art anyway, so you're not going to get to see that. I definitely did not ever feel as highly about it as Alex just spoke of it, so thank you for that. But I did want to do a little bit of a backstory and kind of tell you how I came to this sort of strange job of being a gallerist in Los Angeles. It is a super, super weird job. It is highly specialized. It is as a business model up there with restaurants for kind of when people do it, you're like, oh, that's an interesting thing that you're going to work really, really hard at and probably not make any money. But it has been kind of a dream and passion of mine in a variety of different directions since I was pretty young, since I was this person right here. And so I grew up in LA. I grew up in Santa Monica, definitely in a privileged situation, though at a time where in Santa Monica you could have a single income household with a lawyer and live in one of those houses. And my mother was an artist. My dad was a lawyer. They were wonderful, dorky, Midwestern intellectuals who loved movies, but as total fans. Like, there was no interest in, the scene or Hollywood. I mean, I grew up in LA and I still don't totally understand, how it all works. One of my former preparators loves the story of me going to one of our collector's house, who was at the time a high-up HBO producer, and it was the day after the Emmys, I guess, that's the TV, right? Right, see what I'm saying? So it was the day after, and he was a producer on Game of Thrones, and they had literally like swept the entire thing that year. This was a few years ago. And at the end, he gave me a big hug, and he was like, hey, Deb, big night for me last night. You should check it out. And my preparator, just like afterwards, was like, dude, you didn't know that he won like every award? But I felt very lucky that I was growing up in a family that was more interested in the cultural production than all of the like hoopla that surrounded it. My father, who was his parents were Jewish immigrant orphans in Chicago, and he grew up extremely working class, and when he would tell his story of his life, he told the whole thing in terms of movies. It was like I couldn't get him to remember anything that he did in high school, any activities, names of friends, but I would know different periods of his life based on whether or not he had gone to see Dr. Zhivago with his little sister, and she was so irritating during the movie that he actually left her there, even though she was 6 and he was 9. So the idea of stories as creating meaning was very much embedded, and my mom, who was, an artist herself as well as a social worker, a wonderful, loving empath of a human, she took me to museums all the time when I was a kid, and she would stand in front of things, and again, she would detail different periods of her life, not just what we were seeing in the museum, but periods of her life based on these artworks. And she would talk about, and she would talk about the Monets at the Art Institute of Chicago, and how, after her father died, she sat on those benches for every day, for weeks, and began to understand this new space in her life based on these paintings. So when I was a teenager and I was making a lot of art, I was also really passionate about and interested in what was happening in LA in terms of galleries, which was kind of a strange thing for a teenager to be interested in. Huge difference in the last, 25 years since then? No, that's cool, don't do the math, that's fine. But, in the 90s, there was a lot going on in LA, but it was a much, much smaller community. Bergamot Station had just become the thing in Santa Monica, and you could go and you could see this whole cluster of galleries, and I started reading about, in New York in the early 20th century, Alfred Stieglitz and Georgia O'Keeffe and these great love affairs, and I loved the idea that you could, as an individual person, just open a space that was free to the public, invite people in, and be part of creating that mythology, creating the way that people understood the world and their times, and that was a bridge between, the artist making work in the studio and maybe not having any recognition from it, and what happens when we're at museums, right? Because curators at museums very rarely just happen into artist studios without there having been some other shows happening, right? Some other alternative space shows, some commercial gallery shows, something happening. And I had this idea that I wanted to be one of those people who wasn't waiting for everybody else to have validated, that somebody's work had meaning, but was instead in there talking to them and helping them get to sort of the truest version of their voice. And in terms of continuing on humanity, this is the first picture that was ever taken in my first gallery space when I moved to LA. And I'm going to go backwards and go back to school in New York a little bit, but this was almost exactly 9 years ago. My youngest is now just a little bit over 9. And my husband and I had just moved back from New York, where we were both working in the arts. He was a musician. And it was really interesting because this was this time in, very different from now. I guess this was when we moved, it was 12 years ago. And everybody in New York looked at us and was like, what are you doing? Why are you leaving New York? Like, I had been working in a gallery. Granted, this was a gallery where I was paid under the table and later seriously called by an FBI agent. I thought it was a prank because the gallery was being funded by some kind of money laundering, even though we really did have some great programming on the Lower East Side in 2006 and 2018. And I had been running this literary art journal, and my husband was a lifelong New Yorker. He was a musician. He was lucky enough to be paid regularly for playing live. He was about to get into the show where he would be making great, consistent money. And if you're both working in the arts and you've got pretty solid salaries and it's livable, why are you moving to LA? And I love that now every time I go to New York, I swear almost every single artist I talk to was like, I'm moving to LA next week. It's just this really amazing kind of switch over that has happened. But I also wanted to bring this into play. I had this, we'll get to kind of art art fairs a little bit later if that's something that is of interest. I definitely want to make sure that I check in with all of you and see, if what I'm saying is sort of what you're interested in and if people have questions. But I was going to be doing next month an art fair with these two women who were starting a brand new venture. And one of the things that they did is they sent out questions. They were going to do a social media blitz with everybody's questions. And they asked the questions, and it was a really, really great exercise because they asked, what is your professional motto? Do you have a professional motto? And I was like, oh, I do not have a professional motto. And so I spent some time, and I was thinking, and I got to the most important thing that I believe for long-term success in the art world, for anybody in the art world, definitely for artists, but truly everybody, is resilience and community. And one of those things is because, if you are going to be an artist and make your work long-term, you have to be willing to fail over and over and over again. You have to be willing to be embarrassed over and over and over again. It doesn't mean that you're wrong. It might just mean that the moment is people aren't going to understand what you're doing, but you are constantly putting yourself out there. And not everybody can do that. It is hard. Most people would rather choose something where they don't have to constantly fear, that the risks that they're taking are going to result in some kind of public failure or some kind of perception of negation, And community, there was this article that came out not long ago that much was made about, and some of the art press, that they had discovered, based on some sort of scientific study, who knows what that means, it would have been a sample section of 2 decades in 2 different cities, but they discovered that, who your friends were was more important as an artist to, or a stronger factor of your success than the strength of your work. Now, this is one of those things that I hear, and I want to start sticking pens in my eyeballs, but the way that everybody was taking that was, oh, well, connections are everything. Nepotism, once again, rules the day. If you don't go to X, Y, or Z, MFA, you're never going to have it. But the flip side of that is that none of that is necessarily truth, but it is very, very true that your community, artists together, lifting each other up, make a huge, huge difference in your visibility, your long-term desire and ability to continue to make work. And those resilience. If you have 2 people who you trust to have in your studio to give you their feedback, who are also people who are going to be willing to recommend you to a curator, recommend you to a gallerist. Alex recommended several of the artists who are now in my program, and she did that because she has the faith in other humans to know that being generous is going to come in, that it doesn't hurt anybody's chances, and that in fact, it doesn't mean that you don't get competitive with each other. Every artist I know has friends who they love so much and also sometimes want to throttle because there's always going to be some sort of competitive element. You're going on to the same grants or the same shows, but historically, as well as currently, if you form community, that's where it comes from. And historically, it doesn't always come from the programs that everybody thinks are the ones that you have to be in, or the cities everybody thinks are the ones you have to be in. It comes from the strength of communities and maintaining that. And then the other thing that I said were generosity and kindness are integral components to strength, power, and vision, not detriments to it. And those I feel so strongly about and always have, but I feel that way particularly now. I hate that I'm about to reference a meme without understanding its source necessarily, but recently I saw a number of Buddhist kind of teachers posting and reposting without reading the source this idea that your nervous system was built for a world that no longer exists, and therefore kindness is everything. And I'm going to get to that a lot with kind of what I'm looking at, but I do think that we're at this extraordinary moment where our bodies are now constantly interfacing with machinery. It's been true since the Industrial Revolution and cars to a degree, but now we are so constantly digitally engaged that everybody feels anxious and everybody feels that despair of competition on social media. And so finding ways to be sort of kind to each other and work together as a community, I think, are more and more important as we are sitting in this really lucky and also hard as hell position of being the people who get to create the mythology of the 21st century and what that actually is. Okay, so keep going. So when I went to Brown, and I was, as I said, such a kind of art nerd that I specifically wanted to apply there because they had a program called Art Semiotics, which is like the most Brown University pretentious sounding concentration on the face of the planet. Most of my mom's side of the family who had the more, higher end professional jobs were all in finance or economists. More power to them, but I just remember going to my cousin's graduation from business school, and he said, "Hey, Deb, how you doing? What are you majoring in at school?" And I said, "Art semiotics," and he literally spit out his drink, laughed at me, pointed, and said, "What the hell are you going to do with that?" That's a valid point, pretty much what I've done, but, very, very valid point. So I loved it because it was a combination of visual art practice and art theory. And the thing that I loved about art theory was not all of the jargon or all of the hyper-privileged kids sitting around and talking about, all of these French philosophers over beers. What I loved about it was that it gave you the flexibility to take a lot of what you learn in art history and apply it in different ways to different disciplines. So I was really interested in the fact that I could be painting and working in photography and multimedia, but that I could also go and take an area of art history that I was really excited about and integrate that more fully with what was happening politically at a particular period of time, or what was happening in science and linguistics, and I loved it. But what was the two things that were actually the most formative for me when I was at school, one was that there was a very small, at the time, old house that was the Sarah Doyle Women's Center. Brown was actually the first university in the country to form a women's center, which when I was there changed to like a gender center, gender studies. But it had been there since 1977, and inside of it there was this tiny professional gallery that was run by a board of local artists. And I got to be the director of that gallery for 3 years and put on 9 shows a year in this totally idyllic kind of situation where I didn't have to worry about selling work. I got to sell work sometimes, and when I did, I got a little bit of commission, which was more than my regular paycheck, and that was awesome, and the artist was happy. But I really learned about, studio visits and writing press releases and just the general mechanics of doing all this. And then the other thing that happened in college that was totally formative is that I got extraordinarily sick. I have a very aggressive form of endometriosis, which some of you may know about, some of you may not. Basically, it is a full-body autoimmune disease, but it centers around female reproductive organs. So it is, shunted off to the side in medicine and put under like women's things that are very rarely fatal, and therefore not funded, not really talked about. You may have heard about it because Nathan Dunham has talked about it, and Marilyn Monroe had it, and there's this whole series of famous women that people will talk about. But it's kind of like you have these blisters that form on your internal organs, and they bleed, and it creates Velcro between your organs. It is painful as hell. And that really radically shifted the direction of my world. For a lot of different reasons, One of them being that I have always existed primarily in my brain. I was from a family of brainiacs who were constantly testing me on, everything from like the royalty in England to where we were at a particular time and what county that was, and did I know like who the supervisors of that county were. It was just like that was terrifying. I will never do that to my children, but I had always been very confident in the way that my brain worked, and I thought that I was going to have an art practice and hopefully figure out a way to continue and maybe get a PhD and be in academia or maybe be at a museum. I was very, very idealistic. So the idea of being in the commercial world, which seemed like this deep, dark, dirty pit of, despair and commercialism and everything was a gilded object that was terrible. I wanted this bright, shiny world of institutions and academia, but I couldn't be in my studio for longer than 2 hours at a time, which made it really hard for me to figure out how to make work. And I had a really, really hard time writing long papers because I could do short spurts of things, but I couldn't, sit in. When you're in, and I'm sure there are those of you in the room who know, when you're in a lot of pain, it's kind of similar to having a really high-pitched noise going on in the back of your head all the time. And you can do all kinds of things. It's actually much easier to talk to a room of people than it is to sit by yourself sometimes and be able to focus on writing in detail about a subject or making work in detail. So what I found myself starting to do was exactly that. I was in everybody else's studio. I was, talking to people constantly about their work. I was writing little different things about their work. I was putting on and curating exhibitions in alternative spaces at Brown. But I also knew that after school I was going to have a really hard time getting a full-time job that was going to require me to be out somewhere in the world for, 8 hours plus however long it took to get there and back, so 9 to 10 hours. And so after school I moved to New York, and I realized that the best way that I was going to be able to function was to create a project for myself, if I could fundraise for it, if I could make it work, and also take all kinds of little weird odd jobs that required me to do things for a couple hours at a time. My favorite of those was there was a crazy woman who happened to own one of the high-end costuming places, where the kind of company that movies or plays will rent all kinds of things for, or that Vogue would rent her specific vintage beautiful things. And she had me do 2 hours at a time of repair work on these crazy vintage items. And while I was at home and not up and about, I decided with my friend Ben Lerner, who is an extraordinary writer, he was at Brown with me. He was nominated for the National Book Award at 24. He, along with one of my best friends, crazily won MacArthur in 2015 for writing. He was just amazingly talented. And he and I had met when we were 17 and both at Brown and took ourselves really seriously. And I was a Jewish girl from LA who was bisexual and had really short hair and vintage clothes. And he was like this, debate champion from Topeka, Kansas, also Jewish, long ponytail. We were like hilarious caricature of human beings, but we kept that connection, again, that thing, about community and those relationships, and you don't know where they'll go. And I asked him if he would start an art journal with me. So this is No, a Journal of the Arts, which I have a couple copies here afterwards if anybody wants to thumb through them. They are highly academic in a lot of ways, but they're also a really kind of wonderful moment of this time. Our first issue came out in 2002, and I was in New York, and he was still getting his MFA at Brown. And it was right after Bush had declared war on Iraq, and we decided on the title No, just because we were in this moment where like we are in our early 20s, we're watching the world go in a direction that we are terribly afraid of. We don't know what to do except to create more space for voices that speak to something else and something larger. And so that's what we did. And each issue featured a specific visual artist. It was a wonderful, weird, long process, 6 years of my life in New York. I loved it endlessly. And when I was done with it, I had lost every single ounce of idealism I had about the nonprofit world. Hooray! And the reason for that was that, we were very, very lucky. We had the help and support of, writers who had a great deal of influence. C.D. Wright, who passed away a few years ago, was a wonderful, wonderful poet who she had a press called Lost Rose Press that she allowed to be our sort of nonprofit umbrella. So we had support. We were so lucky that we were receiving grants that we didn't even apply for. So this was kind of like the ideal situation to have for a nonprofit. People were sending us subscriptions. People loved what we were doing. But what I recognized was that even in the nonprofit world, of course, so much of what you do functions on money, and that you need to spend a huge portion of your time courting patrons. And kind of what that did for me was make me go back to my earlier dreams of running my own space and understanding that there is always an element involved that has to do with money, whether we like it or not. We need it to live. We live in a society where, it makes a really big difference for us to be able to support ourselves. And the idea for me, instead of running this sort of, acclaimed journal where I couldn't afford to pay the writers who were, sure they were maybe getting something for their CV and they were getting more exposure, but that wasn't what I wanted. I didn't want to be asking for free labor from these artists who I hugely respected just because we didn't have enough money to pay them. And so I also was desperately excited about being in a physical instead of a virtual space again, because when you're putting together a publication, you're interacting with people mostly online, everybody's all over the place. And so when Jeff and I moved to LA, I was very excited about the idea of seeing if there was a way that we could find to start a physical space and going back to sort of my first love, taking these things that I had learned from the other projects that I had done. Okay, thank you for being with me. Here we go. This is the So, one of my artists, this Chen and Lampert, I think they represent artists in New York as like an agency, but they put out some hilarious memes, and one of my artists sent this to me, and I loved it so much I didn't know what to do with myself, because Muppets and Star Wars and making fun of the gallerist-dealer divide. So the first several years I had this space, I definitely called myself a gallerist. I would still call myself a gallerist a good portion of the time. Gallerist is very much like a virtue signaling thing, right? It's kind of like, well, I'm not just about the money, I'm not just about this, I'm also, I'm thinking about things, and I have a space, and I'm curating, and I'm doing all these other things. As the years have gone by, and I'm now totally in this place where I was like, oh no, I'm going to be Darth Vader. I'm also going to be like a hermit underneath still, you know what I mean? But I'm going to wear the robe sometimes the day that happens. I want my artists to get paid, So it is a really funny thing. I don't know if you guys have heard people go back and forth with this different thing. The one functional difference with it, besides the whole, galleries thinking they wear a halo and dealers being the people who are out late with whiskey getting the deals done, the functional part of it is that if somebody calls themselves a gallerist, usually that means they have a physical space. So they have a gallery, they are curating. Usually it also means that they are showing work by living contemporary artists who they represent and are working with. Dealer can be somebody like me who does all those things, but it can also be, you know, Kenny Schachter, who, if you ever want to look at art news and feel a little bit sick inside, but get a sense of like what all of that world looks like, you know, it's the guy who does the backroom deals for the Warhols, you know, and sits in first class on the plane. But it also can be, you know, somebody who is working in the primary, what we call primary market, which is working directly with artists, doing shows, taking works on consignment, selling them directly from the space. Mostly, a lot of the people who call themselves dealers are working in what we would call the secondary market, which is suddenly the works have been sold. They're being sold from collectors to other collectors, and as we know, that can be really frustrating because none of that money gets to the artist directly. So that's why there's a little bit of a dark figure as the dealer. So first space was on Santa Monica Boulevard. It was across from, it was not surrounded by other galleries. It was across from a cafe called Coogie's Cafe, which I think is still there. It is totally like everybody in there is in their 80s, and it's like the pink vinyl, and I was such a newbie in terms of having my own space. Like I worked for other galleries and I'd done the whole thing, but I didn't realize, Alice has heard me say this so many times, but she's going to be all apart. I didn't realize that, you know, the lease that I was signing did not give me the right to change the awning on the outside of the building, which was like this red and white stripe, like it looked like a deli awning. Nor did it give me the right to pull up the terrible office carpet that was in the space. So the first year of programming, it took me, maybe not a year, it took me 9 months to badger the landlords into letting us pull up the carpet, only to then find that the reason they wouldn't let us pull it up is that there were plumbing difficulties and we had to re-pour concrete, and it was kind of a disaster. There's a lot of stuff that goes with having your own space and your own business that involves plumbing, dead cockroaches, et cetera, et cetera. But this is the first space. I called it Gallery KM. Part of that was because I had a really hard time with the idea of putting my name out there first as this big important thing before my artists. It took me a couple of years of realizing that even people who visited the gallery frequently and collectors who had purchased works several times from me couldn't remember the name of the gallery because there are so many galleries out there with the name gallery and initials. And I was like, oh right, I see that whole thing where it actually helps to have a name because then you remember the name. So a few years in, we changed it to Klowden Mann, but the first few years it was KM. And I should also say that the reason I was able to have this space and do this because we opened in 2010. It was the bottom of the recession, and this space had stayed empty for months and months, and so it was a large, funky, but kind of great space, and the rent kept dropping. And I kind of realized that this was my chance to try something out. And even though I had done a bunch of things in the art world on the East Coast, I hadn't been in LA since I was 18. So I loved the idea of being in this weird space, kind of in the middle of nowhere, and having an opportunity to sort of figure things out, form an identity, build a program before moving to a neighborhood where the rent would be higher, but also where the neighborhood would kind of define the sort of space that people expected us to be. So that was the virtue of our crazy space. The first show we did was with Rebecca Farr, who is wonderful. Her 5th show is coming up with us next month, which is great. It was about sort of migration. Again, with when I opened the space, I had a 6-month-old and a 2-year-old. And this was my first gallery assistant, who then became my manager, who then went off to get an MFA and is now doing other badass things in the art world. Luckily, she liked babies because Casey was at the gallery all the time and on my back a good portion of the time. So this is what the first space looks like. I want you to check out the super cool stone benches that were there. You might be able to see little bits of the carpet. But the first shows that we did after Rebecca's show were on the theme of embarrassment. And we did a two-part show. One of them was embarrassment vulnerability, and the other one was embarrassment theory. One of the things that I have always been fascinated by is this sort of moment of embarrassment, which is something that we're so afraid of, and that I found my professors at Brown, who I looked up to so much, were so afraid of as well. This idea of this like theoretical failure, or this space where the identity that we are trying to present slips up, and it slips up, and it's always in relation to other people in some way. And it was also kind of a nod to the fact that I didn't totally know what I was doing. Like, I was trying this crazy risky thing, and I wanted to forefront that. And so these two shows were all people who had recently graduated from school. We were young in LA. We had this little reading corner that included my grandmother's old chair and a lamp that was kind of falling apart. And it was a really wonderful kind of start out. I love that this is super fuzzy because iPhone pictures, in 2010 were not what they are today. But I really, really needed you to be able to experience the awning. The awning is important. Okay, we can move on past the awning. And then this was, the rest of my life. So I didn't sleep, and I got in a lot of minor car accidents during this period of time. Luckily not with the children in the car. But one of the reasons I wanted to bring them up, they're now 9 and 11, is that for me, having children, despite what you hear in the art world about how it's going to ruin everything, and you're not going to be, dealers aren't going to take you as seriously because you have other responsibilities, and you're not going to be able to fly off to Monaco at a moment's notice. Like, very few people fly off to Monaco at a moment's notice, and most of them are not really people that I want to spend time with anyway, so that wasn't an issue. But for me, having kids is definitely what gave me the resilience and fortitude to do this job. Because when you put yourself out there, just like an artist does, dealers, see how I call myself a dealer right there, not a gallerist? That's right. So we are also constantly putting ourselves out there. We are also constantly failing. We are also putting ourselves out there as much as we can be, as a shield between the patronage that we hope to find, the audience that we hope to find for our artists, and the people who aren't going to appreciate their work. So we're putting out, a show that we love, and I don't want my artists to have to be the ones to hear about the people who come in and don't see it, and don't get it, and don't feel it. I want to be the person who can be out there as a shield and direct the right curators, or the right writers, or the collectors who view collecting as a way of accessing their own creative identity. I want those people, and so I very much view part of my job as doing that, in a similar way to kind of the way that I, feel about my children and letting them do what they're going to do. But the other reason for me personally, is that I was always a people pleaser until I had kids and realized that nobody is ever going to agree completely with how you're raising your children. Never, never. So for me, that was this transformation in which I was like, oh, I'm not responsible for everybody else's opinions of what I do. I'm going to do what I believe in and hope that there are enough other people who want to be part of it and want to sort of join this community. So, yeah, and so this is Rebecca. This is, again, we can talk about whether or not art fairs are interesting, but I wanted to show this because this was this lovely, glorious, shining moment at an art fair, where you're outside and you're hearing all of this, you're hearing music from several different performances, and it feels totally idyllic. And then, the next day, I think I was literally crying in a bathroom because of something that somebody had said said to me, it is, again, that constant thing of resilience and just being willing to go back and put yourself back out there again. This is Rebecca Ripple, who was totally introduced to me by Alex. I wanted to show this because the great thing about this picture is it is an hour before her opening, and I have my hand on that piece of the sculpture because it was going to fall down if I didn't have my hand on it. So, a lot of what you see is smoke and mirrors, and so much of the time, we're all just doing our best to get there, and so a lot of the very polished things that you see, like you can see this in a magazine and be like, oh, it's kind of strange that she's touching the sculpture, but I guess she's the gallerist, she can do that. Yeah, no, we were in the middle of trying to fix something when somebody walked in and wanted to take a picture of it. So, and this is the first space once, the floors have been changed, the benches have been changed, it makes a big difference. Although I have to say that step up right there was a cause of so much constant anxiety. Older people like to come look at art, and we love for older people to come look at art. We don't want them to fall down and break their necks in our space. That's not the ideal. And then this is another thing of an art fair. So I wanted to go from this. This is one of those, pure, pristine, glorious installation shots where everything looks easy.
Yeah.
But 2 days earlier, this is a different space in the art fair, but 2 days earlier, this is what it looked like. And for most people who start galleries, in the beginning, you do everything yourself. Whether you're starting a space in your living room, or your garage, which is actually a great and very smart business plan. I wish that I had done that, probably for the first 3 years, I wish that I had done that. But you do everything yourself until the business is at a place where you can afford to hire other people to do it for you. So now I am lucky enough to have preparators. But, that's 9 years in. Alex and I waited behind the first 2 of your shows together. Like just us? Yeah, the first 2 of your shows together, just us. So this was Alex's second show, which I loved. And one of the things that I really loved about this space, and that was always very important to me, was also bringing in community events. Most of the artists that I show are from Los Angeles, and the reason for that is because I feel like it makes a huge difference for artists to have access to each other in that way and be able to become a support network for each other, and also for the community to have access to each other. And so bringing in musicians and additional programming is something that was really important. These guys working in art fair. In 2 weeks, they're about to go to New York with me and work a pop-up space in New York. So look at pictures of that on social media. I love that he's looking at my phone. It's great parenting. Totally parenting. And this was an early show that we did about a retrospective of a performance group that had been very active in Europe in the 80s and early 90s. A lot of the openings early on looked like this for me, short dark hair, child on my hip. I would still do it if they fit that way. David Lloyd, I love that early show. And then in the early space, when I didn't have to worry as much about insurance and a lot of other things, we did things like, there was a show that was about consumption where everything was edible, and amazingly, we did multiple ant treatments. Yay! And that was the win. Those are the kind of things to think about. Another David Lloyd. This is really so you can see the gallery space had 2 rooms. And that's 2. And then we got to do really crazy things that also I wouldn't be able to do now because of insurance. This was a listening event that we had in the side space in the back where musicians were playing with each other and then built structures around each of the musicians so that you could feel the difference when they could see each other and when the sound was muffled versus not being muffled. I'm going to stop for a second and say, does anybody have any questions? Is there anything that I've talked about so far that you have questions about? Please.
Yeah, what's the best way to approach a gallery?
Absolutely, such a good question. So the best way to approach a gallerist or a curator or a writer or anybody, I think, is to go be a physical body in space. So if you are interested in a particular gallery, go to their events, go show up and support them when you can. I am, and this is, you know, I know that I have a reputation for being approachable, but even for my colleagues out there who have less of that reputation, if an artist comes to all of my events, it may take a long time for me to get to their studio, but I will get to their studio. You know, especially if they're coming and, you know, legitimately being supportive. So that's a huge thing. We have a reputation for being standoffish, and I was much more judgmental about that before I had my own space. And the reason for that is, once I had my own space, I had 17 artists who were on my roster already, who were waiting to hear back from me about X, Y, or Z at any given moment. I had several clients who were upset because a schedule for shipment was behind or, you know, wasn't working right. I had all of the things that come with running your own business. So sometimes I very rarely am, but sometimes I am short with people who come into the space and expect to be able to have that time with me when it isn't already talked about or it isn't already scheduled. Just because, despite the fact that a gallery looks like an empty space where nothing is going on, it is a crazy, constant, very busy, very difficult and demanding job. So just like somebody where that's much more obvious, it always helps if you are saying hello before you're asking for something. That makes sense. You know, so like it does make a big difference, and that's true in my position for curators or, you know, writers. If I'm not going to a curator I admire museum openings and actually seeing what they're doing, I don't think it's fair for me to expect them to come to my artists' shows, you know, given how crazy their schedule is. You know, and not that I expect that they, unfortunately, they're not always going to come, even if I am coming to their openings or to their events or supporting them. But I do think it makes a big difference. Yeah.
Another question. In the age of electronic media, how do you see the electronic portfolio?
Honestly, the best thing to do is have a website. Have your website streamlined so that it is really the work that you feel is strongest. And, you know, ideally either by body of work in each subject, something very simple is great. You don't have to go spend a whole bunch of money having somebody design a website for you. Use Squarespace or Wix or anything that is easy so that you can update it yourself. But really just something so that somebody can easily see your work on their own time. Put a CV up there, put a resume up there, even if it has almost no exhibition history. You will add to it as you have it, and it's a weird psychological thing, but if I go to somebody's website and they have an about section with, you know, a statement that is 4 paragraphs long about what they do, but they don't have a CV that says where they went to school or what they're interested in or, you know, any of those things, I would love to see a CV on somebody's website, even if it just says that you're currently in school and that you're interested in these particular things. It's like a weird, I don't know what that is, but I know that's true for other galleries as well. And then in terms of portfolios, it can be good to put together a PDF, but honestly, having an Instagram account, as much as I hate to say it, and having a website, and then being able to send people there is the most effective, I think, right now. I'm sorry, it's a curriculum vitae. It's just resume, but it's, for whatever reason, it's the standard, you know, for commercial art stuff and institutional stuff that you say CV. I don't know why, but yeah.
Hi. Thanks for stopping.
Sure, no, of course.
Questions. You mentioned Instagram.
Yeah.
And what do you feel is the future of the gallery when you basically have multiple galleries online that are live, you know, available to people 24/7?
Absolutely. You know, it's such an interesting question, and I think that it's really important to whether it's a website, ideally a website and Instagram that you're putting your work on so people can find you, you will have much more visibility on there. And if you do it frequently enough and you also engage with other people's accounts, I mean, I have people who have absolutely been approached by curators because they rediscovered or discovered for the first time their work on their Instagram. And I look at work on Instagram all the time as well. In terms of the future of galleries, we are physical beings. We just are. And so I still really believe that it is extraordinarily important that we allow space for having physical interactions with artwork, even digital artwork. Having spaces that we allow ourselves to cut the rest of the noise and be able to engage with more time. It also is a way that artists are able to put together bodies of work that mean something that are very different. That said, you can do things digitally in terms of a different kind of experience, but it still is a different kind of experience. I think that there is a major struggle about people being able to hold down retail spaces, which to a degree, right, that's what a gallery is. It is a free space where you have things in that space that are for sale and you are able to keep it open based on what you sell. So it's hard, but there is still a real hunger for it, and at least at this point, there's a serious legitimacy to it. So people take you much more seriously as a gallery if you maintain a physical space, in part because of the risk that is involved in that. And they take the work much more seriously because I can put anybody's work up online with no risk. But the average mid-sized gallery in Los Angeles, this number is going to kind of hurt a little bit, but I'm going to put it out there. The average mid-sized gallery in Los Angeles has an overhead of about $30,000 a month. So it is much, much higher than that in New York. So, and that's another thing about when you go in and you feel like an art dealer is not paying attention to you, or a gallery assistant is not paying attention to you. We are stressed out about money all the time. And it doesn't go away as you get more successful, because as you get more successful, in order to maintain that success, maintain it, possibly grow, but keep up with that amount of business, you continue to increase your overhead because you need to have additional staff, or you need to have more space, or you need to do more art fairs. So if somebody like a collector or a patron of the arts or a curator or a museum knows that I am taking this person's artwork and I am putting it up in my space for 5 weeks, and what that means in terms of the risk on my part, that still has a huge weight in terms of what I'm saying about how much I believe in it.
I have two questions.
Sure.
The first is, how do you, as a gallerist, identify trends or know what's good art and what's bad art? Like, how do you determine, if you're going to represent someone or put them in a gallery?
Absolutely. Galleries in a way are kind of like opinion columns, right?
Yeah.
One of the amazing things about them and one of the terrible things about them is that they are one or maybe two persons' vision out there getting a lot of weight, and again, that person is putting a lot out there and risking a lot. So for me, I actually pay attention to trends in the sense of I always want to be aware of what's happening curatorially. I always want to be aware of what's happening in the art market. As frustrating and bubble-like as the higher echelons of the art market can be, there is historically a correlation between what works make it into, right, like the canon and are remembered sooner, and the market. It doesn't always, unfortunately, oftentimes it's especially women don't, the art market loves 80-year-old women. But it is, I mean, it's very, very frustrating. I my co-commitment to keeping my business open.
Sure.
But if we look at art history, the trends have been wrong so often in terms of what has lasting weight and value culturally, that I look to the trends in terms of my curatorial choices as little as possible. So again, being aware, being educated, and also understanding, that if I make a choice that is very counter to those trends, it might be a lean month in which I am also, as I always am, working on something work that I'm not showing at that time. But I think that chasing what is in and what is cool, it just doesn't work long term. And there are a lot of galleries that have existed even in the 9 years that I've had at a gallery in Los Angeles, but certainly in the last 30 years that we could all look at, who have done everything right to be right in that spot of being on trend, and have closed because it's very difficult if that is your metric of value. It's very difficult to maintain that all the time. Cool in and of itself is a fleeting thing.
Yeah.
So that's if that answers. And for me, a lot of it is, it sounds cheesy, but it is a matchup of heart and head. I have to be engaged in my gut. I have to care, and I have to be intellectually engaged. And I also have to feel like I am the right person to help tell this story. I can love somebody's work and know that I'm not the right person to be representing it or be telling that story. And where I can, I try to connect them with somebody who might be, the right person. So, that's another part of it as well.
Yeah, you kind of answered my second part of my question, which is how much personality plays a role in, because I think I'm studying art history, and even now we're looking at like Renaissance painters as well. And ideas of ego and personality were just as fascinating the artist as the person as their work. So is there, do you turn people away because of personality differences, even though their work might be amazing, or how does that work for you?
That's such a good, sticky question.
Yeah.
Turn away. Can I swear? I'm like, hello.
Sure.
I work too hard and life is too short to work with assholes.
Yeah.
So that's the only, sure, it's great if somebody is super charismatic and social and blah, 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 and that's their thing. That's great. Sometimes, though, somebody who is larger than life can also overshadow their artwork. So it doesn't always, historically we like to talk about, Jackson Pollock, he digged everybody and he was constantly drunk and then he crashed his car. We like stories.
Yeah.
But we also still, in some ways think about that character more than we think about the work itself.
Yeah.
And so there's a balance there. For me, more than a specific personality, at this point in doing this, it's somebody that I need to be able to communicate well with them. And not everybody is going to be able to communicate well with me. It doesn't mean that they're not a good communicator. It's just the way that I work is so interpersonal, and I do love my artists, as human beings. And maybe not the first time I'm in a studio visit, I decide I want to do the work, but there has to be a sense of connection for me. It is not, and that's not true for everybody, honestly. I think that it's hard to work with somebody that you don't feel any connection with at all, or any connection with their work. But for me, I've found that I don't do a good job of representing somebody's work if you don't communicate well. So,
I was reading this article and talking about the big art shows that they have in LA, one of the convention centers. This was the first year that there was going to be actually 3 major art shows. And he said that the reason for that is a lot more collectors coming out right now. LA is the hot spot.
Yeah.
How do you see that whole number?
we'll see. actually have a number of phenomenal collectors in LA. But it's a little bit of a cart before the horse kind of a situation. People are very excited finally about the art that's being made in LA. They should have been excited about it for the last like 70 years, but now they are recognizing that it's not just the occasional bad boy cowboy who is making good art in LA, but actually there is real community here, that the space that is available and the way that the city works leans in the direction of being able to make things differently than you do in New York when everything is very compressed. So part of this whole big push for more art fairs, for more galleries, all the rest of it, is that galleries in other places, especially in New York, have artists who now care about showing in LA. If those artists are some of their rock star artists, it makes more sense for them and is more cost effective for them to open an outpost in Los Angeles, especially now that it's seen as cool, and not have to share representation of that artist with an LA gallery because they want to show in LA and they're going to do it no matter what, and they want to keep that artist and keep them happy. So it makes more sense for them to like defensively open an outpost here. I don't know if I'm supposed to say this, but you know, like Hauser and Wirth LA, right, made a big difference. Love going there, love having lunch there, love seeing the work there. I would be very surprised if they're not losing a lot of money on that specific location. Hauser and Wirth in general, totally fine. They can afford to do that, you know? But there is not a huge base of collectors or patrons in LA who can afford to consistently buy work or have the education to want to spend their money on consistently buying work at the level and the price that they're selling work. So it is absolutely true that, you know, there was a bigger art fair that came out here, and so more collectors came out to LA to go to the fairs, generally speaking, and a lot of galleries did well, a lot of galleries didn't do well. But it still sort of remains to be seen whether or not all of that is going to translate into the kind of long-term support and growth that is needed. And unfortunately, like so much of our society right now, right, all of that money is continuing to go to the top. The top 1% of galleries are doing great, and the auction houses are doing great. But the mid-level galleries, which are the galleries that we need to, you know, incubate and support artists at a point when they are figuring out what they want to do, are really, really hurting. And there are a lot of reasons for that, but it remains to be seen if, you know, LA can provide those kinds of collectors here. That said, it's one of the lack of that, in a weird way, the lack of that support is part of what makes the city what it is as an art city. You know, I love New York. It is definitely the city that I view as second home. Lived there for a number of years, go there all the time. But New York is much more top down. It has the history of patronage, and it has, you know, those people who put huge amounts of money consistently into the arts, and there are a lot more of them. But it also means that those people have a lot more control, and that there is less space for the kind of avant-garde, I mean, if we're going to say it, work that we can see in Los Angeles. And, you know, that goes all the way across the board, and it also goes down to real estate prices and the cost of rent, right? Like, it's very difficult to have a space in New York City and show work that is really, really hard to sell and still stay open for more than 3 months. And LA, to a degree, still provides much more of that space, and in some ways, the lack of a significant patron class is part of what has given artists the freedom to make work here without feeling like there's, you know, a magnifying glass on them all the time. So, you know, we'll see. I love that people are living in LA, but yeah.
I've seen 3 phases of, because we live downtown, we live in 3 different time periods. And how the arts try to get get started down there.
Yeah.
The first two, there's a lot that went into it. The whole thing was trying to make the Spring Street Art Gallery, all that thing died.
Yeah.
You know, and I've seen several galleries just hit the dirt. You know?
Yeah.
And now we have the art district, we have these big, all this big capital investor types coming in. And the artwork is, it just seems strange. It seems like a place for that particular place, for the artists that were there. I mean, they're no longer there, and the work that they were creating is more, was the alley art. Now we have art, like pop, we call it poppy art. You know? And we were talking to a friend that had 4 galleries, and she brings in a lot of alley artists, and she says, only less than 10% of really doing the work that needs to be done as far as artists in these galleries. There's a lot of artists that trying to please the galleries.
Yeah.
And then those galleries don't make it. I've seen galleries that take off with the work, they hope they're open 1 month or 2 months, and then they're gone, and then the work also gets lost.
Yeah.
And you see that a lot, I see quite a bit of that.
Yeah. It's tough. And there are definitely, as you know, I like to think that most dealers are people who are crazily passionate about art and just cannot help themselves. And most of the people in my orbit who I know, whether or not they are perceived that way, you know, to the outside world or present that way, are that. But there are definitely some people who are, you know, dishonest and kind of shady. And I wish that weren't the case. Yeah.
We talked about local art, or Los Angeles art. How about on a global scale? Are there people asking, oh, we need some LA art in Shanghai?
Yes. Yeah. LA is definitely, it's so fast. I mean, as somebody who grew up here and was like, why don't you take that seriously? It's, some of that is really rewarding to see. But it is definitely, you know, I did a fair in Shanghai in November, and there were a lot of LA artists on view at that fair. So there is this sense of this moment. And it's, again, it's whether or not we can use this moment to funnel that work to artists and to smaller scale institutions and to mid-level galleries, and, you know, keep it all going versus that, again, just sort of resulting in, like, mostly higher ticket auction prices that don't necessarily affect any of the rest of us in any way that meaningfully sort of helps. So, you know what I mean? So that's the thing. And my hope is very, very much that it is going to do that. And that's the direction that I certainly, you know, believe in and am investing in. But I don't think that we've necessarily seen the benefit of that yet, which is why I'm kind of saying, let's wait and see. I really hope that it all starts kind of funneling into artists, which is what we need. Yeah.
But you were talking about some people aren't able to communicate well with their community.
Yeah.
What methods or what tips or things that you did to make sure that your gallery would be able to have more visibility or be differentiated by other galleries?
Oh gosh, that's a good question. Because I physically can't drink, and I opened when I had very young children, so if I went out late to after dinners or any of the social things that might help with that, I then wouldn't get any sleep at all, because both my children, when they were little, were terrible sleepers. They got that from me. I really depended on my writing. And on, you know, I've always loved writing about art. It's always been my favorite thing. And, you know, after being with artists, talking with artists, seeing art, I love getting to communicate that way. I'm fascinated by language. So, you know, I do think that a lot of that resilience that I started out with, what allows for resilience is really playing to your strengths and not giving yourself a huge hard time for your weaknesses, or what you perceive to be your weaknesses, or what's not possible for you because you have kids at home, or because you're taking care of a parent, or because you have more financial responsibility than, you know, other people might, whatever it is. I think it's finding, you know, what works for you. So the other day, I had a somebody come by and was talking about the gallery, and they said, you know, where's the fancy alcohol, Deb? Are you gonna offer me whatever you offer your collectors? And I was like, no, I don't drink. So, you know, my collectors come in and they talk to me about their love life, and then they buy something. You know, like that's, like we have tea, and we talk, and, you know, and it's sort of, it's a little harder than being able to, like, go, like, do the boys club thing and drink and, like, pat each other on the back. But, you know, if you find your strength and you really push into that, even if it's not the thing that seems like it's fashionable at the time, and you keep working on that, people will start to notice. And so for me, a number of artists, and including Professor Wiesenfeld, who wanted to work with me, you know, they were taking a risk, right? And if you're an artist in a city and have already been showing, and you have a new gallery that pops up, a lot of new galleries last a couple of years, a lot of them have mixed programming. And so the way that I tried to show people that they could trust me was that they could see that I was contextualizing work in a way that made them feel like I would also be able to contextualize their work. And then a lot of it was really word of mouth from artists. You know, artists have a huge amount of power in this community, more than, you know, not as much, you know, wealth power as consistently as we would like, but influence. I mean, artists have a huge amount of influence. So, you know, for me, a lot of it was finding the artists that I connected with and then allowing it to sort of, and being patient, you know, like, and it's hard, right? And it takes, I mean, for me, collectors watch gallerists sometimes for years, just like they watch artists, to decide whether or not they trust your vision and want to invest in it. So, you know, it is very difficult for anybody in the first few years of having a gallery to be able to survive and adequately pay themselves, or, you know, and so a lot of it is also just continuing to believe in it, even when everybody in your family is like throwing things at you and being like, go get a real job, you know, so that's part of it too.
Will you describe a little bit of your process? Because there's a whole artist process, which is making the work.
I'm not quite understanding.
You have a whole different process where you then have to contextualize and then put it, you know, explain to people why this work is important. It's a much different process than art making. Can you explain your process?
Well, I'd love to. It's not as different as you might think in some ways, because the other reason why I love having artists in LA is because I get to be in the studio more often. So, you know, I get to see progressions of bodies of work as the artist is working on them and making them, and we have long conversations about where they're going. And so it is often not, here is a body of work, it is this full form, and you're experiencing it for the first time. So, you know, I do a lot of my work happens in that process as we meet, and maybe I take notes, you know, or maybe I have some ideas, and you know, the more access I have to what my artists are doing, the more that's in my brain and just has a chance to kind of to move around, and then that gives me the opportunity to be able to tell people who ask what they're doing and what they're working on. I feel very comfortable. This is awful. I feel very comfortable being able to spin things that I think are very important for my artists in a way that makes them palatable for people who do not necessarily understand the artistic process.
Right.
And I view that as a really important part of my job, right? Like I get to be a little bit of a translator. And, you know, as I said, giving you background on my story, I come from a more sort of idealistic kind of framework. Right? Like if I could be on this big commune with all of you where all of us were fed and got to do things we wanted to do and could take care of each other's children and like make art structures, all that, like I would love that, you know. So I'm not in it for I don't know, for power as such, or Sorry, I'm gonna sneeze, and I'm right back to you.
So,
Okay, thank you. Then, now I'm all derailed. Will you remind me like where you started with the question?
Your process of seeing the work and then kind of contextualizing
Right.
it.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, a big part of it is getting to like be there with the artist. Oh, that's what I was gonna say. I started out in this idealistic sort of framework where there was part of me that had a hard time with the idea of being able to view myself as a salesperson, right? And because I did start out making work myself, and that is not art as an object, art as commodity is not sort of the place that I was coming from. And what I found more and more that allowed me to really get into it and love being a salesperson is that most of the people who collect art, for them, it is their access to a creative process and a creative identity. The vast majority of collectors that I work with don't necessarily get to be creative artistic beings in their daily life. And so for them, you know, art becomes this passion that they can't stop thinking about, and choosing what pieces and who they're going to support it's a real creative artistic act for them. And I've gotten to watch over the years people that, you know, I started working with change really dramatically from getting to live with work that includes them. You know, I have a collector, you know, I got to start building their collection for the first time. They bought their first pieces of art through me maybe 6 years ago. And he had a surgery a couple of months ago, and he literally called me as soon as he woke up because he thought of something about a particular artist and he wanted to talk to me about it. And that was so entirely removed from, you know, the person that I had met, you know, 6 or 7 years earlier in terms of where he allowed himself to go. And so there's this part of me that, you know, believes in that, you know, as this creative and healing act.
How do you arrive at the pricing for the work?
Oh, gosh. You know, it's based on a lot of different things. So the price of a piece from somebody who has never shown work before is going to be considerably lower than the price of somebody who has shown and sold a lot of work. And it is actually a less opaque process than the press likes to take it to be. When you get to the point of everything is millions of dollars and all the rest of it, yes, that is a opaque, sometimes arbitrary process. And, you know, you have galleries who represent artists bidding on works by their artists so that they don't go at auction for too low, and it's all, there's a very like insider kind of, there's that whole thing happens. But for the most part, it is looked at as a value based on what is behind that work. So somebody who has had multiple museum shows, right? A work by them is going to, it has institutional backing behind it, which raises its value, both as it's like perceived by, you know, community, but also as it's perceived in a market sense, and its likelihood that it's going to go to a museum, or if it's already, somebody is already in corporate collections or museum collections, that will raise the value of based on, you know, how much work sells. So a lot of and I'm sorry I'm not looking over here as much, it's just because of the light. But a lot of the, you know, my world that I'm talking about is a very specific art world, right? There are all these different art worlds that exist at the same time. There's a gallery down the street from me in Culver City who, you know, they are fantastic at selling work that has nothing to do with museums or, you know, reviews in the LA Times, and absolutely just has to do with how many people want to buy that work and how hard it is to get a piece by that artist, because there are all these people in like the skater community who want to pay $20,000 to have a painting by this artist. So like, and that's no less valid. It's a different art world than I operate in, but it's, you know, it's not, yeah.
You know, I think
a while. It's
Oh, yeah.
after 7:30. Why don't we take maybe one more question? And
Do you have more slides to show?
Yeah, I'll show you slides. I can actually like kind of go through them as I'm answering the questions. So I'm very interested. Thanks for hanging with me for so long, you guys. It's awesome.
Thank
We're still going through the old space a little bit. This is an art fair, artist house. But ask the question, you can look as I'm going. You'll see when you get to, you gotta have a dog in there. Yeah.
Earlier you mentioned you're very comfortable spinning your artist's work so they're more palatable.
Sorry, this is the new space. Now we've moved over to the space that I've been in for 5.5 years. You know, gotta keep it real. Please continue. Sorry, go ahead.
So that it's more palatable
Yeah.
to general audiences. Do you have any advice for people that are doing that aren't represented by anybody else, that don't necessarily have eyes on their work of people that may know what direction they should go in?
Absolutely. Write what feels right to you and is true to your voice, and don't worry about trying to make it sound like whatever might read as BS to you on like a gallery website, or do you know what I mean? Like the things that I respond to most if I'm going to read like an artist statement, or if you're talking to somebody who talks to me very clearly just about what interests them. So that's going to be like the first question that I ask you in the studio, because a lot of the time it's the first time we don't know each other, and I will take some time to look at the work, and then I will say, can you tell me something about this, and like, you know, what interests you, like what is it about this that made you want to go in this direction? And I think if you ask yourself those questions and spend some time just even thinking about it, just like writing for yourself, not even publicly, maybe ask a couple of people that you trust to kind of look over, you know, your words, or to let you talk to them about it and asking their feedback. That's what I always respond to most. And I think that's true for curators, dealers, you know, that I've talked to, is that, you know, what you respond to most is somebody who is willing to be brave enough to be honest about where they're coming from, which is the hardest thing in the world, too. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying that like, oh, that's so easy, like just write your truth. No problem. You're creating your truth in artwork, and you should also be able to write it. And I don't mean that I think it has to be brilliant writing or brilliant, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't necessarily have to be the most spinning, hyper articulately, or it's really about just kind of finding a space in yourself where you have a sense of what is honest for you. That makes sense? A little bit?
Yeah.
Art fairs. Yeah, this is new space, James and Carter, Rebecca Ripple, love that show. Bettina Hudby, these were hilarious. Sexual Bronze show, each of these was a pairing that she perceived as semi-sexual from the grocery item and then made it bronze. This is Rodrigo Valenzuela's first show. And in the back, there's a little video. Rebecca Farr's first show second show at the Cultural Space.
What was her name?
Rebecca Farr, Farr. Sarah Camardi. Video installations, and a practical thing to say, and then it can be done because it's 7:45 and I realize it's not like, you know, what a lot of us will do is, if we want to show more experimental work, we just have to make sure that we work our year out of shows in a way so that that month's overhead is not necessarily dependent upon the experimental work. So you do have to do a little, and it's easy to get critical of galleries and museums, to be honest. I mean, you know, museums have to fund their shows a lot of the time too, so it is tough to find spaces, and that's one of the reasons why going to artist-run spaces, even if they only last for a few years, is a great way. Love this show, the Flash show. Thomas Macker, this is a recent David Lloyd show. Katie Herzog, she did a wax rubbing of the entire exterior of the Internet Archive in San Francisco and recreated it in the gallery. Rodrigo Valenzuela's most recent show show in which he covered the entire walls with clay, which is still all over my ladder and the top of my office, by the way. I apparently really love my artists. Jonesy, this was a great show that was really great on queer identity. And there's another art fair. I enjoyed trying to use her thoughts. And I just needed to end about it. I started